Good morning and welcome to IMSA's Institute Day 2022. This session is Code of the Wild, where we will be using software to allow students in your classroom to create interactive videos that tell the story of the interactions between animals and their environment. Of course, you can use it for lots of other things too, and we'll talk about that as we go through. My name is Patrick Young. I'll be your facilitator today. My email address is right here, and I encourage you to keep track of that. And if you decide to use this curriculum that I'm going to give you a copy of today, or Scratch Junior, or any of the concepts here in your classroom, I'd love to hear from you, hear about your experiences, any great ideas that you have that you'd like to share, or any frustrations that you'd like to share. Also, any questions you may have or problems, feel free to shoot me an email at any time. So what we're going to get from this session is the following. We're going to learn how to use Scratch Junior. That's our software package. And we're going to develop some ideas for integrating computational thinking with your teaching. Now, computational thinking might be a new term to you. It does include computer coding. But more broadly, computational thinking is the set of problem-solving skills that computer scientists use all the time to get their work done. It does include writing computer code, but a lot of it's more basic skills as well that are broadly applicable to a lot of different areas. Now, the software we're going to use is called Scratch Junior, and that's the website where you can go to find out all about it. It was developed by MIT in partnership with quite a few other organizations. It also has a thriving user community. And if you find that you really like using Scratch Junior and you have some success with it in the classroom, I highly recommend that you dive deeper into it. The things that we're going to do today are really cool, but it really just scratches the surface of what you can do with Scratch Junior. And I should also mention that it's called Junior because it's a simplified version of a more advanced program called Scratch, which is also quite usable for elementary school students. Because you're participating in this workshop, you also get to download both this presentation as well as a curriculum called Code of the Wild. And it's titled Integrating Computational Thinking with Writing and Science Standards: How Animals Interact with Each Other and Their Environment. So that goes into things in a lot more detail than I'm going to be able to cover today. It goes into a lot of the philosophy behind why I recommend doing things this way. It also dives a little bit more deeply into the different aspects of computational thinking. Today, I'm going to basically just give you an introduction to the software itself and how you can use it and the powerful things that you can do with your students in the classroom. The curriculum itself has 9 different activities, and they go step by step to help students learn the software, develop some skills and knowledge. This is going to give them an opportunity to exercise some of their standards, particularly next generation science standards, but there's also some math and English language arts standards in there as well. Now, you don't have to do it in this formalized way. If you just want to jump right into it and show students the software and get them, let them figure it out themselves, that's great too. But if you want to hit those standards, here's a very logical sequence you can go through to do that. Now, if you don't already have it, it's time to go ahead and get Scratch Junior downloaded onto your machine. It's completely free. There are different versions of it. Scratch Junior will run on pretty much any type of computing device, both tablets and desktops. The tablet version you can see there at the the Scratch Junior website. They have a different button depending upon whether you are using an iPad or an Android device. There is also an unofficial version for desktops available at that second website, and you can go there and download either the Mac or the PC version. Okay, now that you've got that downloaded, what we're going to do is go through the activities in the curriculum in a very brief way, just talk about them. The first activity is watch and play. It's about how to use the Scratch Junior interface. Now, this entire curriculum is written for students in K through 2, and many of the activities have two different versions, an A version and a B version. They do basically the same thing, except they exercise different standards. The A version is always targeted at kindergarten standards, and the B version at second grade standards. Now, regardless of what grade your students are in, you can take a look at each and pick which one that you want to do, depending upon whatever you think is more appropriate for your students. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and find the page which has sample projects on it. And I'm going to switch screens here and go to my own Scratch Junior. Okay. So I'm going to click on the little house icon here. And this brings up a home page. Now, you won't see this because this is a lot of animations that I created. Let's see, there we go. That's the button window. That shows a, here, let's see. Oh, there we go. It's that question mark here we need to click. Here's our sample projects. Now, each of these is basically a interactive video that's been created just for you and your students to play around with, to try out and see what it does. This is just something to get students excited about Scratch Junior. So I'm going to go ahead and click the first one here, which has an underwater scene. And you see here, there's 3 different creatures or 4 different creatures here that are animated, and you can put the whole thing in motion by clicking the green flag. Now, if you want to zoom in so that you can see just the animation on your screen, you can click that button and it zooms in. And here we can clearly see what's going on. Now I'm going to back out again and look over here on the left. You'll see that there is a tab for each of the moving actors in this scene. And as I click on each tab, you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, you will see the program that's controlling the motions of each animal. And each program is constructed of a sequence of blocks that snap together like puzzle pieces, and they move in a sequence starting from the green flag all the way to a red block, which terminates the program. In this case, it's a repeat. So you can play around with that. Feel free to change these things too. You can move things around here. It will not save these sample programs, so you don't have to worry about messing anything up. Here's another one. Now this one is different in that it doesn't start on the green flag, but it starts on actually clicking the animals. So there's all sorts of things you can do with this. Play with play with all of those sample programs just to see what they'll do. All right, back to the slideshow. Activity 2 is called Make a Scene. And this gives students their first opportunity to construct a scene. They're not going to animate things yet. Basically, they're just going to construct a scene by selecting a background, putting a couple animals on it that look like they belong there, maybe, and then writing a story about that scene. So this gives them an opportunity to practice some writing skills. In this particular case, I selected a background of a desert and I gave it an elephant and I put a bat on there and I said, well, it looks like, I don't know, it's either sunrise or sunset. Maybe it's sunset and the bat's just coming out to go fly around and look for food, and the elephant's looking for a place to spend the night. Okay. In activity 3, move it, we create a scene. We allow our students to create a scene that actually includes motion. Now, to put something in motion, there's a series of blue motion blocks, and you just drag these down to the lower part of the screen and connect them in any way that they'll connect. And that will create a program that runs from the left to the right. In this particular case, I could give this as a program for the elephant if I wanted him to move 3 spaces to the right and then maybe jump up and touch that bat. Maybe he just wants to play around. So that's what activity 3 is, actually getting the creatures to move. Activity 4 is called interactions, because we don't really want the creatures just moving around independently on the screen. The science standard that we're trying to reach here is how animals interact with each other and the environment. So we want some actual interactions to happen. And you can do that in Scratch Junior using these yellow trigger blocks. This one here, for instance, shows 2 people running into each other. That's a collision block. So that will start a program whenever this particular animal runs into or bumps into or touches another one. Down below here, I've shown the program for the bat. It begins when the elephant bumps into him and then has the bat flying to the right. Let's see if I can get that up on the screen and we can see how it works. Okay, so here are my different scenes, and it looks like here's the elephant one. So here's what it looks like. We can throw away some of these extra pieces, clean it up a bit. So here is the elephant's program at the bottom of the screen. And if I want to see the bat's program, I can click that button and it shows up here. Let me just zoom in on it now, and I will put the whole scene in motion by clicking the green flag. There we go. Zoom out again. So again, when I have the bat button clicked over here, I see the bat's program here. When I have the elephant tab clicked, I get to see the elephant's program here. This is the rewind button. This will take it back to beginning. Now, what I'd like you to do is to watch the program after I click the green flag here. You'll notice something. It always lights up the active block. So students can not only watch the animation on the screen, but they can see where in the flow of their computer program they are. Okay, back to the slideshow. So this is activity 4, interactions. Um, Bumping into each other is a simple interaction, and it's a fun one to use. But most of the interactions in the animal world are a lot more subtle than that. So we want to talk with students about various types of interactions. I like to show this particular slide here, and to foster a discussion, a class discussion about different types of more subtle interactions. I ask students to look at this picture and tell me a pair of people who are interacting with each other. And, examples include, like, here is a boy, one asking for a balloon. How are they interacting? You can see there's eye contact. They're making hand gestures to each other. These are examples of more subtle forms of interaction. It's pretty simple for most people to see these interactions on this slide. It's a little tougher once you have a picture with animals. Here we have a cat and 2 dogs. Now, is the cat interacting? Doesn't look like it. It looks like he's being a typical cat. He's not paying attention to the dogs. Are the dogs interacting? Well, it's kind of subtle, but many students point out that the puppy here seems to be staying close to its mother, and maybe the mother is being protective of the puppy, standing between it and the cat. Okay. Activity 5 is called control. This is where we learn to write a program with control blocks that manipulate the speed and the timing of motion. You can make characters go fast or slow. You can make them pause for a certain number of seconds, and you can select an end block that either stops the program or puts it into a continuous replay. Here's an example I've created of, this is sort of the story of the tortoise and the hare, but rather than a tortoise, I used a penguin, just because I had a snowy scene here. But they're going to have a race. Now, the top program here is the penguin's program, and on the green flag, it looks like he's going to move at slow speed forward to the right, and he's going to just keep doing that constantly. Now, the rabbit is going to have this program at the bottom here. He's going to move at running speed, a faster speed, but he's going to periodically stop and rest before starting again. So who's going to win? Well, I don't know. Let's hop on over to Scratch Junior again, and I will run the actual program. So let me shift the screen share. Okay. All right, here's that program. And I'm just going to zoom in on it. And when I click the green flag, there we go. So students can use Scratch Junior to tell all sorts of stories. If someone is having trouble with their own creativity and just want to tell a story they're already familiar with, like the tortoise and the hare, they can tell a version of it using Scratch Junior. And even though Scratch Junior doesn't actually have a tortoise available in it, you can make one, and I'll show you how to do that. Let me shift back to the slideshow. Okay. Activity 6 is called looks and sound. You can change the appearance of the animals, and you can even make them make different sounds, and you can record your own sounds for them. Here's a scene I created that has a couple horses. Now, Scratch Junior only provides you with one horse, but using the purple key blocks here, you can actually change the size of them. So what I did here is I brought out 2 identical horses, and then I made one smaller. There's also a paint option that lets you change the colors of them. You can record sounds or text bubbles. Activity 7, animals in their habitats. We're working toward the final project now, in which students are going to research some actual animals that share a particular environment and tell a story about those animals interacting in that environment. So to get them started, they need to select some animals and do some research so they can learn about them. Now, hopefully you have some books, some science books in your classroom about animals. If not, your library or media center should have some. You can also go online, and there are numerous websites that have information for students about animals. Now, what type of research do you want them to do? And that depends on you. If you want a formal type of system so that students can start developing their research skills, you can use something like the Super 3 system, which you can find at the Big 6 website here. I think that one's pretty good, or you can just do it in a more informal way if you prefer. But the idea is they do some research so they understand their animals, at least in terms of where they live, what they eat, what they run away from, where they make their home, because these are the types of things they'll need to know to tell their story. Now that they have an idea, it's time to actually write the story. Now, of course, writing is a continuum that can include everything from pictures to paragraphs. So what you ask of your students depends on what their level of writing development is and what types of skills you choose to focus on in your classroom right now. Finally, we get to the final project. Activity 9 is after they have written their story out, now they're going to use Scratch Junior to write a program that makes an animation that tells their story. So let's take an example. Suppose a student writes this. Mama monkey and baby monkey live in a forest. They eat fruits and leaves. A snake comes. The mama monkey calls to the baby, danger, making whatever sound you want the monkeys to make. And then they get away from the snake. So this is a nice story. You may find that students, the first time they do something like this, tend to go overboard and want to make something that's extremely complex. By all means, acknowledge that creativity and give them the praise they deserve, but help them focus down on a manageable story that's just maybe 2 or 3 animals doing a couple things, something they can easily tell in a few sentences, like this example. So here is what I made to tell that story. Here we have a snake and 2 monkeys. Now let me go ahead and change screens to Scratch Junior so we can take a look at what that program actually looked like. Okay, let's see. Here we go. So here we have 3 animals here. We have the big monkey, the mother, the little monkey, that's the baby. And then we have a snake here coming in from the left. And each has its own simple program, including some interactions. And now I will zoom in on that and click the green flag, and let's see how it runs. And there we go. The snake came in, the mommy called out, and baby ran up the tree. And this is the type of animation that any second grader, or most second graders, would have no problem working with. For kindergarten, maybe you want something a little bit less complex, maybe just 2 characters. But there certainly are some kindergarten students who are perfectly capable of doing this. So that's the nice thing about interactive programs like this, is that students can basically work at their own level. And everyone can make progress. Another thing I want to mention, and this is completely optional, is that you can buy these Scratch Junior coding cards. You can get them on Amazon. They're not that expensive. And each of these cards, they're two-sided, has a couple like practice scenarios, little challenges for students to create a little animation that does something in particular. And I think these are really great to throw out at students who are progressing faster than their peers. When they get through what you've asked them to do and finished a step, you can come by and drop one of these challenge cards on them, and they'll have fun moving forward with that, while you can go back and help those students who are still trying to complete the activity you assigned. So that's it. That's Code of the Wild and using Scratch Junior to help students tell stories. Everybody likes to tell stories, and most students love animals, so hopefully they'll have a good time with this. But also remember that this can be used for all sorts of things. I've had teachers use Scratch Junior to allow their students to make educational videos about bicycle safety, for instance. There's all sorts of directions you can take it. It's a very powerful tool. I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot me an email. Take care.